Okay, so because I want to be able to not have a lot of ramble before the actual video starts, I started it again. But what we're going to be talking about is literally, there we go, there he is. That,
Can
like, just
I flip this around? There we go.
there you are. Yeah, so what we're talking about pretty much today is just the shit they won't tell you about getting your dream body and things that can help you through the holiday season as well, seeing as this podcast is actually going to be going up this weekend. We're going to go into why keto is bullshit, why health at every size is taken it too far, why intuitive eating is not really a strategy at all for the majority of people. We'll talk about cravings, snacks, and hunger, the importance of your environment, and why willpower fails a lot of people. So, with that, hello, Alan. Maybe one of the first things we can talk about, seeing as we are getting into the holidays, is managing social events and eating out and taking responsibility.
Yeah, I mean, I think that this is a great topic, and I think it's one that a lot of people struggle with. And I know that recently I've had a lot of conversations with my own clients about just this type of thing. And I think the thing that helps the most in this type of situation is look at your upcoming month. And I think that this is a good thing to do no matter whether it is the Christmas season or not, Christmas, New Year's, that kind of thing or not. Look at your upcoming month. Look at the events that you have and rank them on levels of importance. We can look at what may be coming up, particularly in this month. We say, okay, well, we've got New Year's Eve, we've got Christmas Eve, we've got Christmas Day. We know that we're probably going to have more indulgent meals on those days. Now, you may have a holiday party with your work, you may have an anniversary coming up, and maybe you find that the anniversary is the most important thing for you. Maybe you find maybe the holiday party at work doesn't matter that much to you. So by looking ahead and being able to decide how you want to prioritize these things, it can allow you to be a little bit more strict without feeling restricted on those days that don't matter as much to you, because you know that you have these important days coming up. And so I find that for most people, looking ahead rather than getting caught up in the moment is the big key piece that they're missing. And I think that if you don't look ahead and don't realize that you have some of these days where you're going to be a little bit more indulgent, that turning things down can feel restrictive. Whereas if you know that you have something coming up, you can look at the current situation or the less prioritized days and say, you know what, I don't have a problem with staying a bit more on plan or on schedule for whatever my plans are for those days, because I know that I've got a day that I'm going to be a little bit more indulgent afterwards. So I think for most people, setting priorities can be very, very helpful. It can put things into perspective for you. It can allow you to be a little bit more strict on those days that you want to stay a little bit more on plan. And it can allow you to remove a lot of the guilt on those days that are more indulgent. And if you stayed on plan for these days that you said, okay, well, these aren't really my priorities. A random Tuesday is a mundane day. An office party may not be that big of a deal for you. And then you get to the Christmas day and you can do it guilt-free because you've planned up until that point.
I think this really brings the importance of planning in general, not even just for the holiday season, because you don't know what's going to come up around the corner, but at least having a structure there allows you to have, okay, so if this happens, then I will. And something powerful to take with you is you need to pick your battles. You can't expect to enjoy yourself every single weekend for 6 weekends in a row and not have that put a big dent in where you are right now. Regardless of if you're in a fallows phase or a maintenance phase, if you allow yourself to just indulge 6 weekends in a row, that's not really the best strategy.
Technically you can. And this is the one thing that I really like to emphasize to people, and I want people to take home. You can do that. Are you going to progress when you're doing that? Probably not, because depending on how often or how much you indulge, you can slow or stall your progress. But there's not necessarily anything wrong with that if mentally you're okay with holding steady. If you say, well, this period of my life is really difficult, and I just want to relax a little bit more, and I'm okay with not seeing, massive amounts of progress, as long as that doesn't demotivate you, and as long as you don't get completely out of the habits and the routines that you're trying to build, then it's a completely okay thing. The issue that I find that most people get into is they have these weeks or months at a time where they go a little bit more off plan than what they had realized that they were going to do, and then at the end of the period they're like, well, I didn't progress, and now I'm really depressed, and I'm really down on myself. Well, did you do the things during that period that was going to bring you to progressing? And if at the time you chose not to do that, that's okay, but then be okay with holding steady or gaining a little bit of weight at the end of that, and then just recommit yourself and get back on track. And that's where people really get caught up, is they don't have this plan to get back on track. So, just like prioritizing your month ahead can be extremely beneficial, then doing things like, before you go into these special occasions, planning how and when you're going to get back on track becomes ultimately an important thing. So if you have Christmas coming up, say, okay, well, Christmas Day, I'm going to enjoy a little bit more because it's Christmas. It's one of the biggest holidays for me of the year. And then I'm going to get right back on track on breakfast on the 26th. And then you're completely fine. But building that plan to, one, prioritize the month ahead of time so you can figure out how much you want to moderate on what days. And then two, having the plan to get back on track after those more indulgent days are both like key points for surviving the holiday season. Because if you don't do those two things, you leave too many things up to chance.
Yeah, again, planning. And that's the thing, like, is it going to be a whole day where you blow it out by 5,000 calories and then leak that onto the next day and then the next day, and then all the days in between, it's just you feeling sorry for yourself, you feeling guilty, you beating yourself up, you trying to exercise it off and just creating a bigger death? Or is it something that you actually planned intentionally? And how many events in a year are you going to do this? Is it going to be, okay, now we're doing it now, and then we're going to do it for the New Year's, and then we're going to do it because it's February? Like, in my podcast with PJ, he talks about there's a holiday for everything. There's donut day, there's hamburger day, there's your aunt's wedding, there's your someone's anniversary, and then your own anniversary, and then birthday this, birthday that. Like, how many celebrations in the year are you realistically taking? And it's not about those celebrations. It's about every other day in between. Because realistically, depending on what you see as a means of progress, if you realize that fitness is a lifelong commitment, and that success, as Allan said, comes from the patience, comes from the planning, comes from realizing that there is no one way to do things. There's no linear progress. There's no right or wrong. There's no pendulums of extreme. It's just where you are in the moment, taking you to where you want to be, realizing that in our last podcast, as Allan described it, as a car journey. Like, you're going to have pit stops along the way. You want to enjoy the journey. You don't want to have it with, like, the kids saying, are we there yet? Are we there yet? People throwing bloody fire bombs at you, having, like, just the most miserable journey in the world, or actually having it one that you can actually make something of. Make that journey itself, that's the goal. The goal is the journey. And with enjoying celebrations, it's intentionally. You intentionally set out to do it, because then you're not going to let that derail you. You're not going to let that take you off track. But it's also something you decided you want to do. And a lot of people have an issue with just saying no, turning things down that you don't want. You're uncomfortably full, but you still feel like you need to say yes. But something as well to consider that many of us forget on this other side is that when all you know is dieting, when all you know is chasing a smaller body, you're perpetually mentally dieting, regardless of if you do enjoy yourself on the weekends, 6 weekends in a row. Then that is probably a really terrible idea, because after the 6 weekends are over, what's going to happen then? You're going to keep trying to diet when you never actually stopped mentally dieting. So now you're in like this
that feeling of restriction becomes really bad, and that like what you're getting at makes a lot of sense for why people end up having those feelings of I'm always struggling, it's because you're never accepting the flow of the fitness or the nutrition journey. And I think that you had mentioned that you and PJ were talking about this, but I think that this is a really good point. If you were actually to map out over the year all the holidays and special occasions and friends' birthdays and all this stuff, there is a ton of days that just organically fall into your life that you are able to enjoy things. And it makes a lot of sense to enjoy things on those days. But the problem that a lot of people have is that because we don't look and plan ahead, what we end up feeling is that, oh, this week I'm not getting anything, therefore I have to jam it in place. And I feel that one of the biggest issues that I've seen with a lot of people is this feeling that you have to have this cheat meal or a cheat day in your week, when if you were just planning ahead, just looking ahead to the rest of your month and allowing things to fall organically, you would have a ton of days that you could have indulgent meals, and it just ends up happening that way. But you have those indulgent meals where you can celebrate with family, where you can celebrate with friends, with a loved one, and you don't pigeonhole it into this meal or this day of meals just because you feel like you need to jam it in. And so I think what you were mentioning about, you and PJ talking about that, really makes a whole lot of sense, because realistically, we have a ton of days every month that come up where there are celebrations of some kind. And we're just not as aware of them as we probably should be.
Yeah. And if all you chase is calorie deficit, that's when you start to fall off track. And you don't see maintenance as progress. You don't see building your metabolism up, for example, as progress. And something that I feel derails a lot of people. Even like building your metabolism up is more like building your lifestyle up to support a higher level you. And if you're perpetually dieting, your metabolism and your hormones are in such a low state that, because your leptin is so low, which is the one that makes you feel like you're full, as soon as you start eating something that's tasty, now your dopamine and reward centers go off the charts. Now you're getting that hunger signal back, but you don't have leptin there to support you to then say, okay, I'm full at this meal. So then you go for a free-for-all. But then there's also the other side where people try to restrict themselves too much. They still try to diet through these events. They feel bad. So then they restrict themselves in public. And then they overindulge away from that event and then end up feeling worse for it because they didn't allow themselves to enjoy, like you said, the natural flow of life. And it comes to taking responsibility and just saying no. But once again, famine mindset, you don't want to say no. You want to eat all the things. You feel like it's a feast for all. You can eat all the things whenever the hell you want, but just not all the time and all at the same time. Because then you'll end up like Veronica from Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, rolling about like some blueberry that's just exploded. Like, that is my interpretation of it, because that's exactly what Veronica did. And I love Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. But, or is it Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory? That one. But it's ridiculous because you're a kid in a candy store. You have never allowed yourself these foods before, and this is gonna feed into health at every size and keto. It's going from one extreme to the other extreme, where because you were restricted for so long, you're now on the whole, I'm just gonna listen to my body. But feeding into this is the keto. So you restrict yourself from all these things people tell you make you fat. You eat fat-laden foods, which actually can make you a whole lot fatter long-term, like my last post said, because they're 9 calories a gram. Yeah, okay, maybe it means that you're cutting out pizza in the short term, and pizza usually is higher in fat than it is carbs anyway, I'm pretty damn sure. But it's like you're cutting out of these foods that you usually binge on, that you usually overeat on. You lose weight, fantastic. But now you're eating on nuts because you think they have protein and they're healthy for you. You eat bloody liver because Liver King said so. Sorry, I had to add that in. But and then you have coconut oil. And then you have coconut oil. You have all these things that you think are healthy for you. But over the long term, they leave you not very satisfied. They don't leave you full. You're still craving pasta. Your body doesn't even know how to metabolize carbs anymore if you've restricted it for that long. Like, it will upregulate, yes, but you're going to feel bloated. It's not going to agree with your stomach. You're going to feel like shit. Then you're going to restrict yourself. And then all of a sudden, all you're craving is chocolate. I want to eat more chocolate. So maybe we can talk about why keto is bullshit.
So keto is an interesting topic, and it's an interesting topic because there's a lot of data for it for certain people, and there are a lot of reasons not to do it for a lot of people. Whether or not you're going to binge off of it is really distinct person to person. I mean, it's very hard to generalize that to everybody. My feeling is that that nutrition coaches, personal trainers, and the average person should never engage in keto by themselves. And there's going to be a lot of people that are going to say, well, keto worked for me. And luckily, in most cases, the people that say that have never done keto. The issue with keto is, first off, we're omnivores to begin with. And there's a lot of benefits of all these different food types. And I would be I'm very wary of food dietary patterns that restrict and take out entire macronutrient groups, because there's a lot of benefits that we can get from some of these things. I would never really want people to be restricting whole fruits or whole vegetables, which can add carbs to a meal. The other thing that I don't think that people realize is that keto is problematic in that you can't really be high protein on keto, because high protein causes an insulinogenic response and will take you out of ketosis. And so all of these people that tell me that they're doing keto, it's probably good that they're not, because keto has a high tendency to, over time, have the propensity to cause micronutrient deficiencies. And a lot of these people think, well, if I do these like pee test strips, they're those strips that you pee on to see if you're in ketosis. They don't work anyways. So that's, these people buy these things and they think that shows that they're in ketosis, but it doesn't. You actually have to have an inhaler to tell that kind of thing. But if you look at the research on it, there's a lot of research that suggests that there are a lot of potential micronutrient deficiency issues with keto long term. And that's why I'm saying it's probably not the right move for personal trainers or for people to do on their own. You should probably be doing this, if you want to do it, you should probably be doing it with either a registered dietitian that's trained in doing this, or with a doctor that is trained in doing it. But I still don't think that it's a great option for 99% of people. Obviously, the people that have like neurodegenerative disorders or some massive glucose control, although even non-keto seems to do just as well as keto in even certain diabetics. So what concerns me about using it is that these people go in, they don't really understand that there are some very distinct health consequences to using keto. And that could be triglyceride issues, that could be micronutrient deficiency issues. And they go in, and it's almost like giving a kid a gun and then just running around saying like, look, this is a cool thing. And luckily, most of these people aren't actually doing keto. Now, if you can't view yourself as eating this way for the rest of your life, then it's not the right choice for you to lose weight. Because once you lose that weight, if you decide to go back to another eating pattern, you're going to likely regain the weight, because you didn't learn how to eat a variety of foods while maintaining that new weight. So this is going to be a challenge for you. And I certainly think, to your point, that keto can cause feelings of restriction in some people. And maybe you do really well for 3 months, and then you say, okay, well, I just want to have pizzas and ice cream again because I have just been forcing myself to do keto. And you were just you weren't looking into making something sustainable long term, and you were looking to just lose weight as fast as possible. And keto is very, very enticing for that, because that first month, you're going to drop more weight on keto than you will anything else. Now, you won't drop more fat. You'll drop more weight, because you're losing a lot of water and muscle glycogen at the same time. And, that's not necessarily a sign of sustainability or health benefits. It just means the scale is going to move faster. But for most people, they don't realize that that's what is happening. And so to them, they think, oh, well, the scale's moving faster than it ever has before, therefore it must be working. But you're setting yourself up for long-term failure if you're not looking at this as a way to eat for the rest of your life. And if you don't have the help of a registered dietitian or a doctor in setting this up, you probably can't eat this way for the rest of your life, because you're probably opening yourself up to triglyceride issues, and micronutrient deficiency issues. So I don't believe that keto is the right move for most people. But
Yeah.
like I said, luckily, most people who tell you that they've done keto have never done keto in their life. They've just done low carb. And lucky for them, low carb doesn't have the same type of micronutrient deficiency issues.
I would also say that it's not really lucky, because the people that have done quote unquote botched up keto, the ones that say it worked for them, are usually holding a lot of body fat still. And it's like, if it worked, then why are you still looking that way? But, oh, it worked, but I got off it and I gained my weight back. So the diet worked, but it also didn't work because your approach was unsustainable and you did something that did not fit you. And then the second type of person I see is, oh, I do keto, but every 2 weeks I have a cheat day with a whole shit of carbs. I'm like, that's not keto.
You're not keto because it brings you out of ketosis.
Yeah, and if you want to actually cheat on it, then you obviously know it's not the right diet for you. And
keto's funny because our body. I mean, carbs that's our body's preferred source of fuel during exercise, for most exercise. And people will look at studies where, with keto, they've shown that if you're doing just maximal strength stuff, like a 1 rep max, back squat, or like an Olympic lift, like a clean and jerk, keto seems to work similarly to a diet with carbs in play. The problem is there are multiple energy systems that the body uses. And then when you start to get into, more moderate to higher reps, we move out of that system where keto works well. And then all of a sudden you do not perform nearly as well as someone that has carbs. So unless you are an Olympic weightlifter who literally only sticks to like the very low reps, high weight, low volume for all their training, you don't do any cardio, you stick to just maximal work, keto is probably going to work fine for those people, but it's probably going to hamper performance, which will slow your progress over time for everyone else. And particularly the more you start moving towards enjoying cardio aspects, the more unfavorable keto is going to be. And so I think that these people really like keto because whenever you go on keto, like I said, you lose all that body water. So you feel lean and mean very quickly. And you're like, okay, this is great. And then you start working out again and you don't really perform as well as you used to. You don't have the stamina that you used to have. Your breath stinks because you're doing keto. And if your breath does not smell awful, if your breath does not smell like a garbage bin, you're not in ketosis. And I think that a lot of people don't realize this, that you're going to be producing ketones and you're going to notice that. And like I said, luckily, I don't think that most of these people are getting into keto.
yeah, something you said there as well is I perform well. Yeah, you feel like you're performing well because you're still giving 100%, but the 100% you could do on carbs, the 100% that you're doing now on keto, like the absolute is not there. And burning fat does not mean fat loss, and that's something a lot of people need to realize.
Right. Burning fat and fat loss are two different things. I mean, you can burn carbs just as you can burn fat, but fat loss is that all just says what you're using for energy. But if you have a keto diet, then you're taking in a ton more fat. So you're still not in any sort of net benefit from burning more fat because you're not necessarily liberating more fat cells. You're just burning more of the fat that you're eating because you're eating more fat. If you were eating more carbs, you would have those carbs to use as energy. And so when it says that you burn more fat, the answer is yes, that it does. Does that mean that it's burning your stored body fat? Not necessarily. And even if it is, you're replenishing that with the fat that you're taking in.
And this comes to stop taking shit advice from Facebook groups. Something that irks me, and I'm sure irks you as well, is how soft we are becoming. It's like you give someone the right advice, or you tell someone something's bullshit, or you cut the shit on things, and people automatically go down on you for the one that's cutting the crap. And it's like, no, it's just we're so sick of bullshit that we just lay it as it is, and just because it doesn't suit your narrative does not mean it should not be said. And this also comes down to like intuitive, well, not in the same bucket, but also stemming into the whole intuitive eating type of mentality. It's people don't like being told things that make them face themselves and how it's their actions that are leading to their lack of results, so to speak. But I guess we can go down two rabbit holes here, with the one being don't get your advice from Facebook groups like Keto, Carbs, this. Something that I see a lot in my Facebook group. I don't know what you see in yours, so you can bring yours up as well. Don't eat white food. Only eat good carbs. Don't stay away from bread. You're better off eating sweet potato and whole and right whatever else people say, and brown rice and quinoa and grains, and they don't even say grains, but just eat your good carbs. Avoid the bad carbs. Bad carbs store fat. What else do I see? I see fasting. Fasting does something for.
Let's tackle the first one. Let's tackle this first one first, and then we can kind of move over some of those. The idea that that foods are bad just because they're white. What they're really is they're probably saying don't eat the least processed food that you possibly can, is essentially what they're saying. But that's not always the case. I mean, like russet potatoes are white and sweet potatoes are not white, but they're neither one is more processed than another. So the idea of color is just, that's arbitrary. The idea behind like don't eat more processed foods, I mean, the problem with that is a blanket recommendation, that can be a good thing. But it really depends on the overall context in the diet. You know, if you're having, you know, mostly whole foods, if you're getting a lot of fruits and veggies, if you're getting a lot of lean proteins, and then you have some white bread, is that going to be problematic? No, it's not going to be problematic. And you know, it's perfectly fine. There's a lot of benefits to all these different types of foods. So as long as you understand their context within an entire diet, you can certainly have some of these more processed foods in there. And I think that the biggest issue that where this got lost in translation is the idea was probably to have less overall processed foods in the diet, which I think that most people with Western diets could probably benefit from. But you know, we're a culture of extremes, and so when we get told have less processed foods, that turns into have no processed foods, and try to have, you know, completely whole foods all the time, and that can be a good thing and a bad thing depending on how a person takes that. But rather than looking at things as like good or bad foods, we can have more nutritious and less nutritious. Now, or is white bread going to be slightly less nutritious than you know, whole grain bread? Maybe. Again, it depends on the entire context of the diet. If you've got a person that has very little fiber in their diet, well, maybe replacing the white bread with some whole grain breads might be a good idea. If the person has impaired glucose control, say you've got somebody who is diabetic, then you are going to want to control the insulin response and the blood glucose, you know, levels as much as possible, and then more high fiber foods may make more sense. So then you might want to stay away from white breads. But are you yourself a diabetic? In most cases, the people saying this, the answer is no, and so maybe they're being a little bit overprotective, or a little bit, you know, fear mongering as far as that goes.
Yeah, and also on that note, it's never actually carbs that are the issue. It's insulin, and insulin isn't just about food. You can increase your insulin sensitivity by just stretching, by walking, by going to do some weight session, and making sure you're eating at regular intervals and not going a whole day fasting and then letting your blood sugars crash. Like, there are many.
In a calorie deficit, even insulin doesn't matter, you know, because the calorie totals are going to trump insulin for their actions. In a calorie surplus, the more insulin that you have, the more propensity you'll have to store some body fat. But in a calorie deficit, insulin can do whatever it wants, and it doesn't really make a difference for your fat loss. And so that's a nice thing to be able to rely on. But for most people, Trying to micromanage insulin is probably a waste of time unless you are diabetic and then you have to keep an eye on those things. I mean, don't really worry about it. Stay focused on doing the things that you need, that you need to do. Eat more whole foods, exercise, get some sleep, drink some water, eat a fucking vegetable, and you will be just fine. And the biggest things are that we avoid these like really common things because we're looking for a magic trick.
Yeah, and it's in looking for a magic trick that people fall into these rabbit holes of believing every single bullshit thing that people say. Like, here's another one. You just need to balance your hormones, because I really want to do a post on this. But your hormones get balanced from your lifestyle. Like, there is no way to balance your hormones. Your body fights to stay in a homeostasis place, and as soon as it's pushed out of that, it's going to either ramp up or ramp down hormones, processes, whatever the fuck, to keep you alive. Like, that's the point. And it's the same when people say don't eat that, it's too acidic or whatever. I don't even hear people say that anymore. But when people used to say only eat alkaline, it's like your body fights really hard. Like, yeah, there are things that can throw it off, but rarely. And it's only if you're doing dumb shit because you heard some keto clad on Facebook groups tell you so.
Well, it's funny because the answer for a lot of these things that people really worry about, like hormones, outside of pathology, for things like hormones and like gut health and all that, the answer for every one of them is the same. It's eat more nutritious foods, get some sleep, go exercise, and drink some water and stress relief. That's literally the answer to 99% of fitness questions, and people don't like it because it seems too simple, but that's what the answer is. The issue isn't that it's not straightforward. The issue is that it's difficult to do these things well for long periods of time consistently. And so rather than worrying about finding magical tricks, what we should be worried about is finding ways to consistently do these things that we know that we should be doing, like sleeping more than 7 hours a night, and with my clients, I look at them all the time, and I have a ton of clients who do like 5 hours of sleep, and they're like, I'm tired. I'm like, right. And they're like, is it because I'm working out too hard? I'm like, no, it's because you're getting 5 hours of sleep.
Yeah, there was actually something, I was listening to a podcast of someone doing questioning with one of the clients, and I will answer that digestive thing because I had to go through something. But she knows that she needs to improve her sleep, and that's the thing that's leading her to fall off track with her nutritional protocols. And she kept trying to ask for, okay, but are there any supplements that I can take to make this work better? Is there any this? Is there any that? Like, she kept trying to find that one thing to make it easier when she knew, and she admitted that it was the fact that she was scrolling her phone every night way too long, that she was only sleeping like 5 hours. She admitted it, yet she was still looking for some magic pill because we don't want to do the hard things. But with the digestive thing, I used to have a lot of digestive discomfort, and I trialed, it was only a period of time, it was like for 2 weeks. I went from the time I went to bed at like 6 p.m. That wasn't the time I went to bed. The time I ate my last meal at 6 p.m., I didn't eat until the following 1 p.m. And I did that for 2 weeks straight just to give my belly more of a break from digesting food. And I felt like, yeah, I did that for 2 weeks. It was so freaking hard because I'm someone that loves food. But I found that giving my gut that digestive break for a while then helps me to normalize the actual digestive patterns from that. But I also found that increasing I put apple cider vinegar in my salads and stuff to increase my stomach acid to help me digest my food better and chewing better. Like, there are so many strategies. Maybe we can talk about digestive issues. I'll talk about things that I know work for clients and myself, and then you can do the same. I find that apple cider vinegar helps with increasing stomach acid if that's a problem. Actually, moving your body helps as well because that stimulates the peristalsis, as in like the movements of your digestive tract. There's that. There's also chewing your food, which a lot of people don't do. Not this could work for a lot of people, not everybody, but not eating straight after you work out because you're in a sympathetic state, you're in a stressed out state. So allow yourself to actually get back into a more calm, relaxed state before you eat. Being more mindful with your food and not scoffing it on the go, not walking and eating at the same time because you're not giving like there's no real blood going to your digestive tract if you're also moving and being stressed out. They're the things that I find work as well. And eating the right balance of fiber, as in not too much and not too little, helps. And maybe not fasting for a whole day and then eating 1,000 calories in one meal and expecting your body to just get off pristine clean.
Yeah, this is another one of those things that I think that people try to micromanage a little bit too much because there's not a whole lot that we can do to really improve this greatly outside of someone having a pathology issue, someone having something that should be addressed by a doctor anyways. Fiber is certainly probably one of the answers there, and you can get too much, although I don't think that I've ever really seen anybody eat too much unless they're supplementing a lot on the side. So I think that a lot of this has to do with actually getting some fruits and veggies in a diet, getting some good solid fiber in there. You can get too much. You're likely going to feel a little bit of discomfort or a little bit of bloating when you start adding fiber in, at least for the first 3 or 4 weeks. I find that that's pretty common with clients, and then it tends to normalize afterwards. But most digestion, chew your food, drink enough water, eat more whole, minimally processed foods, get some fiber, exercise, and sleep. Again, it literally always comes back to these same things, for hormones, for gut health, for body composition. Like literally all of these things are the answer. And I think that people don't like how simple it is. And again, just because something's simple doesn't mean that it is easy, but it is simple. And people that push all these different supplements or these magical ways to eat are probably just kind of blowing smoke up your ass to sell something. But, I think that if we just focus on these core things, that we'll do just fine in most aspects of health.
Yeah. And something that I also see a lot in this group, and then we'll go through what you see a lot, people demonizing actually to go into the sleep thing, and then we'll come onto the sugar. But sleep, if you don't get enough sleep, that in itself can decrease your insulin sensitivity over the next 24 hours. So another lifestyle thing, it's just the lifestyle stuff that you guys don't want to deal with. And that's when your cravings go up. That's when you get hungry for the wrong types of food and you don't feel like eating your normal protein and veg stew isn't appealing enough because you're not hungry, but then all of a sudden all you're craving is sugar and fats and shit. But cellulite, reduce your sugar. Everything is about sugar and processed foods. We already spoke about having less processed foods, but I don't think a lot of people realize that carbs break down into sugar as well. It's just making sure that you also get enough fiber and you get everything else that comes with it. What else do you see?
It's the dose that's the poison. It's not that there is some sugar in our diet that's causing an issue. It's that there's too many calories in our diets and too few nutrients. So if a large proportion of our daily calorie intake is from prepackaged low satiety, high energy density foods, we're going to be getting a lot of calories with relatively few nutrients, and our body needs the nutrients to function. And so that's kind of why we always talk about whole minimally processed foods. Limiting sugar is probably the right way to say it to the majority of people, only because you don't need to eliminate sugar. Absolutely you don't, but you probably need to limit compared to what you've been used to eating, only because Western diets are so prevalent in Western diets. So if we understand that sugar itself isn't bad, but we do need to prioritize getting nutrients. If we take care of getting the nutrients, getting the fiber, getting vitamins and minerals, getting what we need, then there's room for some of that sugar on the side. And the sugar shouldn't be the star of the show, but it can be a supporting character. And so I think that that's where people really get confused. And I also think people get confused because those very anti-carb or pro-insulin is the reason that you have all the woes in the world people. The way that they trick you is that they take research that is either in people that don't have glucose control, like diabetics, and they show you what happens to diabetics, and they say, oh my God, you need to worry about this when you're not a diabetic. Or they show you what happens to people when you're in a massive calorie surplus, and they don't mention that, say that you're trying to lose weight and you're actually in a calorie deficit, then the actions of insulin become largely non-contributory. Like insulin is a storage hormone, right? If you don't have excess calories in the system, if you don't have more calories coming in, there's nothing to store. If you have a negative of something, if I take money from you, you don't have anywhere to put money in your purse or your pocket. And so it works the same way with calories. You cannot store something you don't have. And so even if there is insulin in the equation, there's nothing for it to tell to store. And so, because your body's using those calories to survive, or it's liberating more calories from your fat cells to use that as energy. And I think that what people don't realize is when they're presented with this information, they're not realizing that the information is not relevant to them in their situation.
A way that I hold that really can help some people see it is your body's going through a constant state of storing fat and liberating fat throughout the day, throughout the week. So it's constantly storing, constantly liberating, constantly storing, constantly liberating. And then if by the end of the month, end of the week, whatever accumulates over time, if you are liberating more than you are storing, then you are in an energy deficit. That's literally the way it works. It's also the fact that people just demonize insulin as though it's the thing that leads to all misery, but it's the thing that you also need to get fuel into your muscle cells. It's what you need to survive, and it works in a system where whatever you give it, it responds to. And I don't want to let you run away without talking about also the unspoken pressure of alcohol and what that usually does to the system, because once again, it's about the dose, but also alcohol's stream down effects a lot of people aren't really aware of.
So it's going to affect men and women slightly differently. And I think that a lot of people don't realize that too. It tends to affect men more than women, but that doesn't give women a blank check to be able to drink as much as they possibly want to, because the fact of the matter is there is no amount of alcohol. Drinking a glass of wine is not healthy. There is no amount of alcohol that's healthy. It's just not. So getting that out of the way, physiologically it's not healthy. So getting that out of the way, if an occasional drink is good for you emotionally, then it can serve a purpose. The problem is that with frequent use or with particularly a lot in one time, it does tend to cause a lot of downstream effects beyond the fact that it has calories. So you cannot just count it as calories and think, okay, well, I've counted the calories, therefore I know exactly what I'm taking in. It doesn't really work that way. Particularly for men, there's a significant effect on the Leydig cells that produce testosterone. So your testosterone starts to significantly go down. If you take it too close to a workout, it can attenuate or lower the beneficial adaptations that you would have gotten from that workout. And it can last quite a while depending on how much you drink. I mean, it can last a little over 24 hours if you've had a lot to drink. But the biggest thing that affects both sexes is it messes with the way that you utilize protein. And so you don't have a tendency to use protein to repair and build muscle quite as well, lean muscle quite as well as if you weren't intaking alcohol at the same time. And so both men and women, this can slow your progress or stall your progress long term if you're doing this too much, if you're doing this too close to when you work out. And women don't have the same issues with the testosterone that men do, at least not to that same extent. But women still do have the issues with it disrupts sleep. It impairs your ability to use protein and repair your body and adapt to these stresses. I mean, you're going to the gym for a reason. You want your body to get stronger, to get leaner. I mean, getting more toned is a combination of building lean muscle and losing body fat. And the calories plus the effects to protein can slow down that progress in both of those. So there are some very real effects. And I think that the way that we can view this in the right way, because I don't think that people are going to say, okay, well, I'm not going to drink at all forever. I think the right way to view this is stop pretending that it is healthy in some way. A glass of wine is not going to be healthy. The polyphenol amount that they show you in studies is significantly higher that you're going to get in a glass of wine, so it's not going to give you those cardiac health benefits. But can you have, you know, a moderated drink from time to time and not have it throw you completely off? Yeah, you can. But that's the thing. It's about moderation. It's not necessarily moderation to one person isn't necessarily moderation to another person. And you know, I had one client who said that moderation for him was having 36 beers a weekend. That's not moderation. And so, you know, we really have to come to some realistic grips with, okay, well, how fast are we progressing? And if it's not as fast as you want it to be, then you're going to have to make some changes. And probably that first change is cutting down the amount of alcohol that you drink.
Something that I did love, something that Jordan Sire said, he got one of his, like, he's all for moderation. So he's like, yeah, okay, we can try to fit in this alcohol for you, blah, blah, blah. But she kept continually complaining that she wasn't seeing any progress. So then he put her on a challenge for 30 days, saying, don't drink for 30 days. If you have a problem doing this, then you have a problem with alcohol. It's not that, because this is going to lead into the whole flexible dieting and intuitive eating thing that's taken too far to the wrong side. But after the 30 days, she saw phenomenal progress that she's never seen before. Something that I feel people don't recognize with alcohol as well is how much it can hold back your fat burning and muscle gain and progress in general, because of one, what it does to your sleep, and two, what it does to you the following day. Because you're going to feel like shit the next day most of the time, even like if you drink like 3 drinks and it's impacted you in some way, or if now you feel sluggish, you feel like, I don't feel like doing anything now because of the fact I went out last night. And if it impacts your sleep, we already know the detrimental impact of not getting high quality sleep. Like, you could feel like you slept like friggin' Sleeping Beauty. But did you really? No. Because the quality of your sleep would not be there whether you felt like it or not, because it impacts, is it your REM sleep that alcohol impacts?
It impacts all levels of sleep. And so, I mean, depending on how much you have, it'll impact all levels of sleep. But, you know, it's again, the dose is the poison and the frequency is the poison. And is it beneficial if you can have a little bit of stress relief and use it for, generally, we don't want to use it as a way to relieve stress. But if you can use it in a celebratory manner and incorporate it into part of your life in a moderated sort of way, it can serve some benefits because it can cause bonding with you and your friends. It can allow you to enjoy celebrations, and that can be a great thing when it's not looked at as a necessity in your life and when it's not looked at as a crutch in your life. And to your point, you know, if a person can say, okay, well, I'm having some issues with alcohol, and we've certainly all dealt with people like that. Well, one, getting a professional and maybe a psychologist is probably the right move. But having said that, doing something like a 30-day, okay, I'm not going to do this type thing can work very well for a lot of people. Now, it has to be that person's choice. It can't be a coach forcing you to do it, but the coach can bring that idea up. And if they decide to do that, I can tell you from personal experience with clients of mine that that usually you'll come back after 30 or 60 days or whatever they say that they want to abstain. And they're like, you know what, I feel a lot better. I don't need to drink as much, and I don't need to. And it tends to kind of break that obsession or using it as a crutch to get through your daily life. And I think that a lot of people go into college, and this is kind of an issue that they get into college and then they never break it. So can you use some abstinence at least for a planned period of time to break this cycle? Yeah, I think you can. And your point of it's going to ruin your sleep and then you're going to feel a little bit crappy about going tomorrow. One of the biggest issues that people don't think about that this will cause is if you feel bad the next day and then you say, okay, well, I'm not going to meal prep or I'm not going to go to the gym or whatever it is, you could potentially be getting to that point, if this becomes frequent, that you're hurting that ability to build that habit of getting into the gym, that you're a person that gets up and gets into the gym. You're putting that habit building process on hold or regressing. And that is more problematic in a lot of cases than the physical issues that some of the alcohol causes, because if it causes you to all of a sudden completely go off track with your physical fitness journey, then that's added in as another negative.
Yeah.
So I think that's something people need to look out for.
Yeah, it's zooming out and seeing where else is this actually infiltrating in your life. And I guess you see this as well. Just because something looks good on paper doesn't mean it's going to turn out the way that it should. Just because research says something as well doesn't mean it's going to turn out the way that it should. And I hate this when it comes to like group fitness apps and group challenges and group this, group that. It doesn't, like, it looks good on paper sometimes, but it doesn't take into the psychology, and it doesn't take into account the psychology and dieting history that actually leads to the sustainability and being able to stay consistent with something long term. And I also want to bring in this, because you're really good on talking on this, cravings and snacks at the office, because I feel so many people struggle with that.
So, how to deal with them, is that what we're getting at? I'm assuming. Cravings are an interesting thing, because there are a lot of different strategies to deal with cravings, but it's not like, okay, well, this strategy is how you deal with cravings. There's a lot of different things that you can try, and each person needs to find the strategy or the combination of strategies that works for them. And again, the issue is that not everything works for everybody, and each person is so different that you need to find what works for you. The number one thing that you should probably do to deal with cravings is to adjust your food environment. Now, this is not necessarily the answer to your exact question, where you have it at work and then you can't necessarily get rid of the food or hide the food from yourself. So the second thing that I find that is probably the most successful way to deal with the types of cravings that you can't get them out of your line of sight, that you have to deal with them because like they're in the break room at work or whatever it is. You can avoid the break room for longer periods of time than what you would normally do. If you were normally like stopping in the break room after, my experience is working on, in a medical setting and working on patients. So sometimes we would just go and hang out in the break room in between patients. And if that's a trigger for you, if that's a reminder, if you see the donuts that are in there, stop going in there, go somewhere else, get something else done somewhere else, go into an office area, get something done, and stop teasing yourself or torturing yourself by seeing that stuff. But beyond that, I find that for most people, the best thing that you can possibly do is have each person come up with a substitution list, at least 5 things. And this can either be an activity that is meaningful to the person or a food substitution that the person enjoys, to an extent. So by activity, I mean what's important to you, what matters to you, what relieves stress, what is productive. Can you go for a walk? Can you, play video games, read a book, get some work done that you needed to get done, do some laundry? These are all activities that could improve your day in some way. Either it is enjoyable for you, like reading a book or playing video games, or it gets something done that you need to do that you don't need to stress about later, like doing laundry. If you have these cravings, go and do that. The other thing that you can do is you can do a food substitution. And so instead of having the brownie, think about having non-fat Greek yogurt, think about having a protein shake, think about having fruit. And if you have to say to yourself, well, I don't want fruit. Fruit is not going to solve this problem. Well, then there you have it. You've just told yourself that you're not actually hungry. This is a hedonic type of craving. You're doing this because you want that experience of the brownie. You want the mouthfeel. You want the taste. You want, the satiety or the pleasure of eating that food. It is not hunger. And so if you can ask yourself, will an apple solve this issue? And you say no, well, then there you go. You know that this is a craving and not actual hunger. And I think putting in that.
I was gonna say, I usually say chicken breast because fruit is still like a sweet taste. So it's like if you don't want to
Yeah,
eat it, chicken.
the calories in like fruit is like, it's going to be 60. They're going to get vitamins. They're going to get fiber. No one has ever gotten fat off of eating an apple. So, and an apple's a very easy thing, like an apple, a banana. They're very easy things as long as they're not dried fruit. They're very easy things to have in the break room that you could have as a substitute. And it could be ready for you, and you can look at that and you can say, okay, well, this is my option, and I don't really want this. And that is your answer right there. You've just told yourself that you're not actually hungry. And so that can help people to stop that sequence, because the issue here is that we get a reminder, and so we can either change the reminder, which is not going into the break room, removing the foods from eyesight in the break room, or you can change the response to that reminder. And changing the response means making another activity come into play or substituting a different type of food. So you have these options to address a habit that you don't like to do, what most people call bad habits. You have these options to address these bad habits, but you have to tackle one of those aspects of the habit to make it change. And I think that asking yourself that question about, I always use fruit as an example because it's an easy thing to even just like have, sitting around in your car, because it can stop you and make you think about the situation and say, hey, is this actually hunger, or am I having that craving? And then once you become aware that you're having that craving, that gives you the power to do something about it. And cravings are very much like a kid throwing a tantrum. If your child throws a tantrum, you don't give them whatever they want, because all you're doing is teaching that child to continue throwing tantrums in the future. Your body does a very similar thing. I mean, it's a psychological thing, but your body does a very similar thing, where if it has that craving for a donut, and every single time it has that craving, you reach for that donut, even subconsciously, it's going to ramp up that craving feeling, because you're teaching it that this is what it needs to do to get that. And so by becoming aware of the fact that these are cravings and changing your response to that craving is how you break that cycle. Now, is this going to be an easy thing? No, it's not. It's a difficult thing. But the homework that I give my clients is come up with 5 things, either activities or food substitutions that you can do at any time, any place. Write them down. And either put them on your phone, put them by your, your bedside table, put them next to where you watch TV, put them wherever you have these cravings, and reference that every time you start to notice you're having this craving. And that will break that emotional cycle of you responding to that craving in a certain way.
I love that. And something that I also add to ask my girls is, what are you hoping to get from this food? What feeling are you wanting to get from this food? What are you actually feeling when you eat it? Is it just because you want the food, or is it so you feel like you fit in? Is it like, what is it? Is it because you've told yourself they're bad for so long that you're wanting them? Maybe there's a way that you can incorporate something into your weekly life, into your daily life, where you don't feel so restricted from the foods that you banned yourself from for so long. Like, I love having dessert there for my girls at the end of the night, where it's just like you eat it and you brush your teeth, but it's something that they've planned to fit within their calorie intake. Because when it's planned, you feel in control. When something feels out of control, or when you feel out of control of the choices that you make, that's when it starts to go in a downward spiral. So that's something to keep in mind as well. And you're real. Just fucking say no. Like that
No, I mean, the issue that people are going to have with that is you just have to be realistic with yourself and say, okay, well, if I have this food, can I have a little, moderated bit that'll fit into my day, and then not anymore? And if the answer is yes, then it's a perfectly logical choice to have it. It's a perfectly solid choice to have it. If you have that, and then all you do the rest of the day is think about that food, then it's probably not the right choice for you. And so you have to be very conscious of your reaction to this. And so the answer for everybody, it's going to be different based on the individual. And the answer for everybody is going to be a little bit different. And so just like just like alcohol, maybe needing to take 30 to 60 days and detox from, from eating it, maybe you need to do the same thing with chips, or maybe you need to do the same thing with brownies or donuts or whatever it is that you're finding is problematic. And you don't have to say that I'm going to give this up forever, but potentially consider saying, okay, well, I'm going to give this up for 30 days or 45 days, and then I will reevaluate at the end of that time. And if I feel more in control, then I will start to slowly reincorporate this back in. And again, it is literally about breaking that cycle of how you respond to those reminders.
Yeah, and with that as well, it's when, like, keep the promises you make to yourself, because the only person you're letting down is you. And something that a lot of people do is they ramp on about people not upholding their end of the bargain or falling short on what they say, or when they don't give as much effort to the work compared to them putting into that particular piece of work. It's like, yeah, but relate this to yourself. Are you putting in the effort that you expect of you expect of yourself in terms of reward? Like, it needs to match each other. And you don't need to have everything all at once. It's, yes, okay, maybe you want to enjoy something that's there that usually isn't there, but first pause and ask yourself why. See if it, like, plug it in, fit it into your day first, and be in full control of the decisions that you make. Because it's when you lose that connection between you being in control of your choices or letting emotions drive the bus that it can lead to you spiraling downwards.
Yeah, I mean, this is the entire challenge of a fitness journey is essentially combating emotions and fighting, for most people, 30 or 40 years of habits. And that's why, again, like I said before, fitness is largely simple. It really is. And that's not to downplay the experiences that people have. The experiences that people have is that it's very difficult. And it's difficult because of that psychological aspect. But that's also probably the reason that, these like fitness apps and stuff like that don't tend to get the same type of results that coaches do. And it's because the coaches are there to deal with the psychological aspects. Those fitness apps don't ever handle that. And that's unfortunately the hardest thing, because people in general know what they should be doing. It's just getting there that's the problem. And so you need somebody to help you through that.
Yeah, and it's also, yeah, okay, well, programming doesn't always need to be tailored down to every single little second of a tempo, but it does have power when you have your own program that is made for you. You being accountable to that coach, you being accountable to yourself, knowing that your coach is there to guide you and call you out on your bullshit. And it's also your responsibility to do your check-ins, to check in with your coach, to tell them when things are going wrong. It's a relationship and it works both ways. It's not the coach doing all the work. How are you going? How's this? Why are you, like, yes, I feel like we do need to take a lot more of that slack, because there's a reason why clients want us. Because they can't motivate themselves to do it themselves, or there's some sort of shame in there. But the more that you can be accountable to yourself, the more that you can be honest with yourself and the coach, the more that they can actually help you through. But going back to the training thing, not every single week is going to be perfect. Sometimes you might need things to be reshuffled around, and you aren't supposed to know how to do all of those things. It's not your job to know. It's your job to be a mother, a worker for whatever job you have. Like, you have all these other things to worry about. The last thing you should be worrying about is how to make your fitness and nutrition work for you. So what do you go to? Anything that actually gets the pain over and done with straight away. It's almost like, would you rather die a slow death or just be like, plop, and out? It's like, people don't want the torture of a slow death. They would rather be plop and out. It's kind of the same thing, but with the diet.
Well, I mean, the thing with the coach is you do have somebody that can help raise accountability, because you've got another person in the mix. I mean, you're doing it as a partner with them. Whereas I think things like, running your own program from Google or running an app, you don't really feel like you have to check in with that. And so I think that some of the extrinsic bonuses of working with coach can really benefit people, because it can help with reliably doing the things that you need to be doing. And like you said, having some customized routines can really increase the chances that you're going to succeed because you feel like it's actually for you as opposed to just a generic reply.
Yeah. And I can speak on this because when I was trying to rehab for my hamstring, I was just doing some group thing just to get me by until my hamstring recovered. And I wasn't giving it my best. I was like, maybe I'll do this, maybe I'll skip this, maybe I'll swap this for this. But as soon as I went back to my coach, because I've always had a coach myself, it's why I'm able to keep doing the things I'm doing and able to keep progressing and able to keep making results because I have something that keeps me on this lifelong commitment, something that pushes me to my next level and manages my recovery, that does what I do with my girls and that we never do with ourselves, and that's stop us doing dumb shit. Literally, because as much as I stop my girls doing dumb shit, I don't stop myself doing dumb shit, but he stops me doing dumb shit. But it's I leveled up my effort, I leveled up my intensity, and I leveled up the amounts of fucks I give, I guess, to what I'm doing, because I know that I have someone there he's not even watching me. He's not even like yelling at, like watching my training videos 24/7 and watching this, watching that. He's not even like going through my food intake, blah, blah, blah. But I feel like I should be that much more oomph because now I have a plan and it's made for me. It's not some generic fitness app. So maybe you can sum it up with why it's so, because of all the dumb shit that's there on Facebook groups. You post a question saying you have this issue, and then 10 people come in with one answer, 10 people with the opposing answer, and then people with things that just make no bloody ready sense. Why it's so beneficial to have like a coach, a plan, and especially through the holidays. Not saying.
I think knowing who to trust is a very difficult thing for most people, and I think that it's a very difficult thing for most people because most people aren't qualified to vet this information. And I mean, that's the exact reason why you get a coach in the first place, because you don't really have a full grasp of the information, but then you're stuck in a situation where it's like, well, how do I know that this person has the right information? The best thing that you can really do is start to ask the person questions, or start to follow them on, social media and see, can they back up what they say? Do they have an understanding of the opposing viewpoint? Can they speak to that? And these Facebook groups, that's not just Facebook. I mean, anywhere in social media, anybody that's ever used a spoon thinks that they're qualified to talk about nutrition, and unfortunately, that's the reality of the situation. And so you have to take what people say with a little bit of a grain of salt. And if the answer is, well, it worked for me, then it's probably best to ignore that person. It doesn't really matter if it worked for you, because you don't know what about what you did actually worked, because the reality is most people are not, tracking things directly. Most people are not really understanding what is causing the changes in what they're doing. So try to find somebody like an established coach, like Ruby, and work with them, because if someone's worked with many people, then that experience builds. And ask them questions, say, hey, why am I doing this? And a good coach will explain that. They'll sit down and they'll explain it to you. And why not this? And I think that's a really important thing to answer. So you say do this, but the other people say do this, why not this? And I think that's a great question, because if the coach can say, okay, well, you don't do this because, and then they explain all that to you, hopefully, with some scientific references, if they can point it out to you. But if not, there's a lot of anecdotal experience that can come into play. But you want a person that understands both sides of the equation, both the side that they're pushing and then the opposing side, because that's the only way that you have true understanding about a topic. And so, do we crowdsource our information? No. It's the same way. It's the same reason that you don't go into an online forum and say, and give your symptoms and ask for people to diagnose your medical problems, because most people aren't qualified to do it. And so find a professional, find some references if you can, find some results that they have if you can, and then interact with them. I think that's the best thing you can possibly do.
Something I want to add to that as well, because I speak to Luke Lehman a lot about this, is sometimes a lot of the research is lagging, and also the research shows the average of a lot of different things. And I feel some people just need to stop questioning things 24/7, because that can also be holding you back so much. It's just like, it's been 3 weeks. Keep doing it. Allow yourself to actually.
It's going to take longer than you
want to actually experience it first, because something that you and I'm sure you see it as well, it's you question things so much and want to know so much of every single thing that you don't allow yourself to just feel the benefits for you, because there's still the placebo, there's still the nocebo, and then there's a downright dumb shit bullshit that's out there. Like, yes, it's good to point out that, but over questioning every single part of the process takes out the enjoyment of it, the experience of it, and not everything has a blank out answer without you actually seeing it for yourself, because n=1 a lot of the time. But when things are so blatantly obvious, that is when it comes to, okay, this is why it is this way. This is why it's not this other way.
Was that it? I was like, is that a question? When there's not good research information for something, yeah, I mean, you're going to have to rely on anecdote. And there are certainly a lot of questions in fitness that fall into that place. And I think that it's funny because, evidence-based people, when you say you're evidence-based, that doesn't mean that you only listen to studies. It means you look at the studies when you can. When there's a lack of evidence, then you see what you have from the studies to help guide you, and then you use real world examples and take it from there. So there's not always a perfect answer, like you're saying. What I mentioned before about asking your coach questions, figuring out if they've got a good track record, and then determining whether they're trustworthy as best as you possibly can, because it's a difficult thing. Once you've done that, that's when committing to the program and the process is probably a good thing. Trust the plan is what people always say. Now, never stop asking questions, never stop learning. But assuming they don't give you a reason to feel like they're bullshitting you, I think that trusting the plan can be a very good thing. And to your point, you're not going to see progress as quickly as you want to. That's not how the body works. No matter how fast we progress, it's always too slow for everybody. And so 2, 3, 4 weeks, you're not going to have a full transformation in that amount of time. I mean, I had one guy who, after 1 week, was like, I don't see a difference. And you're like, it's been a week, and he couldn't wrap his head around the fact that his body wouldn't change in 1 week when he got a coach. And so you hopefully can have a conversation with the person and calm them down and say, okay, look. We take a variety of objective metrics. We take, bodily measurements. We take body weight. We do progress photos. Let's keep an eye on these things for 3, 4, 5, 6 months, and then see how things go. And as long as we're moving in the right direction over a few weeks, we know to keep going. And so, if you can be pointed towards some of these objective measures, if you're feeling better, if clothes are fitting better, if you're stronger, if you have less stress. All of these things are reasons to trust the process. That means something's working. Keep going and make adjustments when you need to.
The most important thing to sum this up is stop looking for progress in just one area as well, and to give yourself more than friggin'. Just because you've been doing the thing for years does not mean you're going to get progress. It's as soon as you start doing the right thing for long enough, and by long enough, it's longer than 4 weeks. And you won't see progress if all you look at is one measure of progress. Like, you need to zoom the fuck out and see all the other things that are improving. Your relationship with food, the fact that maybe you're eating more veggies, you're eating more protein, you're drinking more water, you're managing your emotions more. Like, there are things outside of the scale that lead to long-term progress that may not be physical for the now. But over time, it adds up, and then the physical starts to come with that. So with that, this is going to be episode 244. And is there anything else that you want to add to this, Mr. Allan?
No, I mean, I think that we covered a lot in a solid amount of time, and I think that really gives people something to look at over the holiday season. But the big thing, don't wait until the last minute to get started on a fitness journey. Even if you want to get started tomorrow, any little thing that you can change is going to benefit you. If all you do tomorrow is get an extra hour of sleep, you're doing something better than what you did before. So I really stress, don't wait until January 1st. Start tomorrow, but lean into it as easily as you need to, but make some plans on getting started and you'll do just fine.
Yeah, and I highly recommend you guys listening to this podcast. So this has been recorded on Instagram Live for those listening on the podcast app, but I do recommend listening to this again in the new year so you don't fall for the emotional bullshit that ties at your emotional strands, that makes your hair stand up on end. Don't listen to that shit. Like, actually slow down, pause, and figure out what it is that you want to achieve. And I guess just listen to this podcast again. We've said it all. I don't need to repeat anything. Just listen to it. And follow Allan, follow me, and we put this shit out there that's true. And we both sometimes do. He does them more than I do. Question and answer boxes in our stories. So get onto those, and I will hear you in the next podcast.
Thank you, Ruby. It was great to be on.
Bye.